This is part 3. We start in the 48th verse of chapter 40. And the reality for where we've been these last couple weeks has more to do with the physical nature of what this future temple is going to be like and how it's going to be put together. Because the Lord wanted to make sure that everything that the people heard was something that was accurate to the most minute detail possible. And that's why so often we see him as he is talking to Ezekiel, the Son of Man. He says, you got to pay attention. Just think. He didn't have a recorder to record all this conversation with God. He didn't have somebody taking notes. He wasn't typing it on his laptop or iPad, and he wasn't recording it on his iPhone. God is just talking to him in the Spirit and showing him a visual of all of this stuff. And he has to remember it now, not just today or tomorrow. He's got to remember it for years and years and years and years, because they're still in exile for another 50-odd years from when he's started all of this prophetic work. So where we find ourselves today is last week we ended up talking about what they called the inner court, which is on the temple. And I did, by the way, we'll use it the next couple weeks. The very last page of the handouts or the inserts has a little bit of a map there that shows Israel, and it highlights the section here that has to do with the specific area around what would be Temple Mount. And it's not just a little place you're going to see in there. It's like 8 miles by 5 miles. It's pretty substantial. But when we get to the inner court, one of the things we first of all notice is the sanctuary. Yep, the sanctuary. And on this insert that you see in the back of your bulletins, when we get to this area here, you're going to realize this little square, that's the sanctuary. That's the most intimate, private part of the temple. And it's about 175 feet by 175 feet square. So it's not just a little place. It's a reasonably big size. And this is real private to the priest and the Lord. And when we think about how all of this is going to work out, we get a picture of it here in Ezekiel chapter 41. I'm just going to highlight a few of these because there's a lot of text today, and we're going to zoom through them. Then he measured the wall of the temple, 6 cubits, and the width of the side chambers, 4 cubits, all around the house on every side. So he's got this measuring rod that is being employed by his guide, and that guide is showing Ezekiel in this vision, this is how long this wall should be, this is how high this wall should be, this is how thick this wall should be. And all of this continues to be a description of what the future temple is going to be like, and it's going to be a bit different than the temple that Solomon built, that many of these people of that time frame would have remembered Solomon's temple before it was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. It's a picture of what they had in the past, but now this is a much more substantial one. Verse 6, the side chambers were in 3 stories, one above another, and 30 in each story. So you have these side walls that are 3 stories tall, and in each of the stories, there's 30 rooms. And this is all the way around this thing. So that gives you an idea of how many guards there are going to be, because those chambers are typically for the guards of the temple. Verse 7, the side chambers surrounding the temple were wider at each successive story because the structure surrounding the temple went upwards by stages on all sides of the temple. Therefore, the width of the temple increased as it went higher. It's a little different than the way we would think about building something today. You know, you build a skyscraper, you start with a wide base and then you narrow it up. Here the temple is this size at the bottom, and as it goes up 3 floors, the width increases. And a part of that has to do with the significance of who is where, what job the people have that are in those particular rooms. And I think he's late for work. Verse 8, and I saw also that the house had a raised platform all around. The house is the center portion of the sanctuary. And that just means that it wasn't just 4 walls and there you have it. No, it was designed in a special way. It had what they say here in this case is 6 long cubits in height. That's about 70 or so feet tall. No, it's not a bad ceiling. It's a little bit more in here. But it's what we see going on here that has to do with the memory part of the guide telling Ezekiel. You have to remember this. Write it down. You got to get it. Come on, God's going to be. He'll be upset if you forget. Can you imagine what a prophet might be going through when all of this information is being processed? You know, this number, this number, this number. I mean, I could measure that door back there, and by the end of service, I'd forget what it was. But here's Ezekiel. He's got to remember all of this stuff. Verse 9, the thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits. Okay, so the outer wall is 50 feet or so. Well, you got to know that. It's important. The free space between the side chambers belonging to the temple and the outer chambers was 20 cubits in width, all around the temple on every side. All of this stuff is going on, and I can only imagine his mind swirling. The doorways of the side chambers, down at the bottom, there's more free space all around. The building that was in front of the separate area, the side towards the west, was 70 cubits wide. Where's that at? I mean, if I'm Ezekiel, I'm going, slow down. You lost me at 5 cubits 2 pages ago. No, he's got it all down. Verse 13, then he measured the temple, 100 cubits long. The separate area with the building and its walls were also 100 cubits long. Also, the width of the front of the temple and that of the separate areas along the east side totaled 100 cubits. So you'll notice on this little map thingy we have here, it's a perfect square. And everything geometrically is done such that it's so easy to remember. I mean, if you say it's 100 feet or 100 cubits long, 1,000 feet, well, it's a square. 1,000, that's real easy. I could figure that out. Here we see he's talking about all of the things concerning not just the temple, but the entire building, all along the front, down at the bottom, all along the front of the separate area behind it with gallery on each side. 100 cubits there, he measured the inner nave and the porches of the court. All of this is kind of like duplicating stuff. The whole point of the exercise here is that there are all of these various rooms that are adjacent to the sanctuary, which is in the center, to the inner court, to the outer court, and the outside walls that are built around Temple Mount. That will be what will be Temple Mount in that future time. And the idea that Ezekiel has the responsibility to make sure all of this is done correctly, that's quite a burden. But we also know Jeremiah is getting similar information. Ezra is getting similar information. And these guys are going to make sure when all of this unfolds, that future day, it's why we have this book. It's why we have all this information. It's because God made it a part of his plan that this would never be lost. And here it is. I have the same stuff Ezekiel had. Is that crazy? And the reality for all of this is that the new temple and that whole area is going to be done in such a way that it's going to be perfect towards the structure and the construction detail that God had provided for the prophets. Golly Neds, between 580 and 520 BC. 600 years, even before Christ was born. All this information is there. And it carries on right up until today. And it won't change. The entrances, the exits, all of this stuff. The detail, verse 18, carved with cherubim and palm trees. I mean, right down to that minute stuff. Palm trees. How tall? Don't worry about that. You'll know when you get there. Cherubim, those are angels with little halos and things. Yeah. Valentine's Day with a bow and arrow. How big are they going to be? Don't worry about it. It'll all be taken care of. Everything will be fine. A man's face towards the palm tree on one side and a young lion's face on the other side. Well, how big's the man? How old's the man? How big's the lion? Is it a woman? Is it a man lion? Don't worry about the minutiae. Everything is going to be fine. They were carved on all the house, all around. All of this stuff, we get so caught up in details, but the reality of what we find out in all of this stuff, where we see all these different descriptions of what will occur at a future time, it's going to be pretty spectacular. Talks about the doorpost, the nave, the entrance, the sanctuary, of course, the altar area. And that's important because the altar is where all the sacrifices will be taken place of. This is the table that is before the Lord. In the center of that sanctuary is going to be God's space. He's going to be treated a little differently than everybody else. And all of these other things, when you talk about the doors, the swinging leaves are basically just like a bifold door. Everything is going to be functionally perfect. Everything is going to be so good. We'll even get to see it. Won't that be something? My goodness sakes. What are you doing today? I think I'll go to Jerusalem and see the temple. Okay. How are you going to get there? No problem. Beam me up, Scotty. And all of this is going to be taking place in a future time for us. Ezekiel 42 in verse 1, then he brought me onto the outer court. We talked about this over the last few weeks. The outer court is the big area. The inner court is big as well. But when you realize the magnitude and the size of all this stuff, I talked about today the people of the Islamic faith when they do their Hajj, when they have to go back to, say in this case, Jerusalem to Temple Mount, and the city is basically overrun with Muslim pilgrims. We're talking tens of thousands of people coming to that Dome of the Rock. And in this future time, when we think about the fact that we as saved believers in Christ, when we get to visit all this stuff, it's going to be not tens of thousands. It's going to be hundreds of thousands. And that's why you have a space that's not like Temple Mount now, which is, 50,000 square feet or whatever. Now you've got a place that's 8 by 5 miles. It's got to hold a lot of folks. And that means they're going to have a lot of snack trucks and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But the things that happen here have to do with all of the physical aspects of what's going to be a future time. All of these dimensions. And you see these, I changed the printed numbers to numerals just because it gives a little bit different impact. 50 cubits, 20 cubits, 100 cubits. All of this stuff here. Inner chambers, outer chambers. It gets so confusing. But when you stop and look at the pictures and think about how you design something, when you make your house or when you move into a house, you want to know, where are the bedrooms? Where's the bathrooms? Where's the living room? Where's the kitchen? Where's all this at? This is basically what is going on here. This is all a description. If this place was for sale, this is what you would be seeing in the listing. All this thousands of square feet of space made for people who are going to be going there in a future time. There were 3 stories. We talked about that in the different rooms that the guards will be in. All of this is set up in such a way that there will be no way that people who visit this place, who go there to talk to God, because that's the purpose of the temple and the sanctuary, is to be able to have a conversation with the Lord. There will be no doubt in their mind that this is going to be one of the best places ever. Remember, they're called guards, but they're not really guards, because in heaven in this particular time, there's no violence, there's no sin. So everything is going to be happy. You won't have to worry. I think the main reason the guards are going to be there is for housekeeping and giving directions. Oh, go down the hall, turn left, walk 2 miles. I think that's what's going to happen. They're not in a situation here where there's any fear of violence, because there will be none. No violence allowed in the millennial kingdom. That's going to be happening here. Continues to talk about the chambers on the outer court. This place is so big. That's why I decided I'd go ahead and put this in there. Because it talks about these dimensions in not 50 feet or 100 feet. It talks about them in miles. This is pretty substantial. And when you see how the whole nation of Israel, north to south, size of New Jersey, okay, that's Israel today. The state of Israel, same size as New Jersey. And you see the ocean, Mediterranean Sea on one side, and you see the Jordan River on the other side, and then the country of Jordan. In between there, you've got this space. And that's exactly how this map shows it divided up in that future time. 12 tribes, 12 sections, this whole city area that looks kind of small when you look at it in scale, but then you realize it's in the whole state. Well, it's only 8 miles by 5, 6, 8. Yeah, it's a pretty big size. Anything that's 8 square miles, that's pretty good size. And the reality for what these people are going to be finding has to do with everything that we see here, all of these different dimensions and areas of this future time. What we always have to remember is God does not waste people's time when He's doing something prophetic. Everything has a purpose. And all of this detail that goes through Ezekiel or Jeremiah or Ezra or Daniel, all of this has a factual background that needs to be dealt with so that in that future time there are no mistakes. God's a God of perfection. Everything He says is truth, and this is part of what has to be done. So when we think about all this, and we started with the sanctuary, we know that the entrance is going to be really elaborate. What did He say He's going to have? He's going to have palm trees and faces of cherubims, and there's going to be lions and young men, and all these different carvings are going to be surrounding it. And what's neat about that, some of the archaeological stuff you find in Jerusalem today is from the Temple of Solomon, carvings just like that. Pillars that have palm trees on them from the time of King Solomon. Is that cool or what? And all of this is being done because it's based on what the Lord wants to do. But there's one thing missing that we don't see mentioned or talked about here. There is no discussion on the veil. Remember back in the day, the Holy of Holies in the temple, set apart where the Ark of the Covenant was, the Ten Commandments. And only the high priest was allowed to go in there once a year. This veil, this large curtain, was not a curtain like this. No, it was like 40 foot tall, and it was like 30 feet wide, 4 feet thick. That's a curtain. Actually, that's more like a moving wall. And when Christ died on the cross, what happened to that veil? It was split in half. And when people read that and they don't understand what's going on in the Bible, they say, well, so He ripped the curtain, big deal. 4 feet thick, 40 feet tall or so, split it in half. There will be no veil because God and Christ are going to be present in the temple. Accessible to who? Everyone. Not just One man, one time a year. My perception is we'll be able to, we might have to wait in line, but we'll be able to go in and sit down and say, God, what's up? That was pretty cool, God. I made fun of the Browns and they won last week. Go figure, you know? So what we know is going to be happening here is all this other different stuff. There's no discussion about a golden altar, which was something that Solomon had. Remember, Solomon was the richest man on earth at that time. Everything was gold and jewels and silver. And he had this golden altar of incense. It was something that was a big part of the worship of the day. David wrote about it in Psalms. Psalm 141 and 2. May my prayer be counted as incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as the evening offering. And the whole point of this particular text from Psalms is the fact that incense does what? When you burn it, it rises, it floats up, and it fills the air. And the incense was supposed to signify that you would be making all this go to God, and it would fill the room, and God would be present in the middle of all that incense. And it would be so good. You know, I burn candles around the house now. I don't know if any of you do that, but some candles really smell good. Yeah. I'm fortunate because my grandson Drew's girlfriend has a candle company. I get a discount. And some of these aromas she comes up with are amazing. It's really pretty cool. So imagine in the day, here's this golden altar and they have incense burning all the time. And it would have been herbs and spices of the day. And it would have filled the room and the people would have been in awe about how wonderful it was. Psalm 141 and 2 told us about how the incense rises. Verse 3 of Revelation 8. Another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him, so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which was before the throne. So he comes in holding this stanchion, and they fill it with incense, and I can just kind of like picture him waving it all around. And that smoky incense stuff is filling the air, and everybody is going to be so happy. We'll learn more about that in Revelation. But the fact that we know here now is that what Ezekiel is going through, in this, particularly now in the 43rd chapter, he sees the glory of God return. The glory of God returns. And this is really significant because something really happened in a bad way when all of this negative stuff was going on in the life of the Hebrews. The glory of the temple departed because of what we saw in that first text I read this morning in chapter 44. The presence of God used to be this light or smoke. That would be the incense. Behind that great big curtain. And it would signify that he was present all the time. You know, you look into a room where the door's closed and maybe you see under the threshold and there's a light beam coming out. Well, that's kind of what's going on in these old days. Solomon's temple, God was present all the time, and everybody knew it because there would be this light emanating from there. And it wasn't because somebody turned a switch on, it's because the glory of God shines bright. And there was a time just before they got taken into exile that God says, I'm out of here. You guys are too much. I'm leaving. Good luck. Enjoy your new homes. You know, the northern kingdom, Isreal, they got taken away by the Assyrians, and Judah, the southern kingdom, they all got taken away by Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. And so God's like, yeah, have fun. Maybe I'll see you again in 70 years when you come back to Jerusalem. And this is what happens. It's this reality that Ezekiel is going to see the glory of God, that bright light, return. Verse 1, chapter 43, then he led me. This is the guide is taking Ezekiel on this tour. Then he led me to the gate facing toward the east, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel was coming from the way of the east. And his voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. We can paraphrase that by saying, Ezekiel looked to the east, and all of a sudden things got bright, and he could hear the voice of God. Wow. That would be like Dean Nelson having loudspeakers out there playing, I don't know, Led Zeppelin or something, you know? It'd be like really cool. And we're hearing all this rock and roll music, and that's God's voice. Really bright and shiny. That's Ezekiel. He's sensing now in the presence of this guide, God is coming back. He is going to return. The glory of the God of Israel was coming from the way of the east. Remember the eastern gate. Jesus will return through the eastern gate. This is part of why the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, think God's going to return at that point. And his voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. And it was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision which I saw when he came to destroy the city. And the visions were like the vision which I saw by the river Kabar. And I fell on my face. And the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate facing toward the east. So here's Ezekiel, and the guide is saying, look over here. And when he turns his head, it's like, woof, all of this stuff's going on. God's present. He hasn't been here for, forever. He left. He's coming back. And this is what makes all of this so significant. When we see the reality that as God will be approaching Jerusalem from the east, that's when we find the glory and the voice of the Lord present in what would be this new millennial temple. And it would be the opportunity for him to be in this significant form. It's kind of hard to describe. The Lord comes and he says, I'm going to go to this place, and it's going to be the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell among the sons of Israel forever. He's saying, when we build this thing and I'm back here, that's it. Eternity is ready. We're going to all live happily ever after. No more war, no more sorrow, no more sadness, only tears, tears of joy. All this stuff is going to be changed, all because of that. I'm going to zoom past here. You have to, and we're going to learn this just when we close here in a few minutes. You'll have to understand that all of its statutes, meaning God's rules, all of its laws, God's laws, all of them have to be met and all of them have to be maintained. And the whole purpose of this design is to put everything together so that everyone will understand exactly what I expect you to do, how I expect you to live. He's talking to the Hebrews. And then by default, that will apply to all people, as we see. Verse 12, this is the law of the house, meaning the temple, its entire area on the top of the mountain, that would be Mount Zion. Jerusalem sits on top of Zion. All around shall be most holy, because this is the law of the house. That's the reality of what's going on, and we know because of that, the whole land is going to be glowing with the Lord's presence, by His radiance. And we also recognize that because of what's going on here,